So every single month, I want all of the listeners to think about it is how are you working, how are you thinking and refining your target market? How are you thinking about your circle of influence and how you build that? How are you thinking about building your relationship with your customers and your prospects? And what sort of offer are you asking them to engage with? So if you can do those four things consistently, then you will build a business that continues to feed itself. So that's how I think about it. So those four keys are really the areas in which you can really get and build trust with your customers and build a strong business.
Welcome to Thrivecast. I think it's episode 78 or 79, depends on when this goes live. And with me, I have a wonderful guest. His name is Matthew Vyat. Matthew, let me know if I'm saying your name right.
It's usually Wyatt, like Wyatt Earp, but we got the WHY, so Wyatt. Yeah.
And I've been talking about doing a podcast on this particular topic. He's a seasoned sales strategist. If you look up his LinkedIn, which I will have it in the show notes, you'll find that he's been working with many growth companies. He's a B2B growth advisor. He's helping primarily SaaS founders scaling by aligning sales, marketing, and product teams all coming together. This falls right into our wheelhouse of the Thrivecast audience that keeps looking at how do we essentially bring the unified teams and unified growth together. He has also been championing the aspects of changing the outdated sales mindsets, that hey, this is the new age, and today's topic is going to be a testimonial towards that. And let me introduce the topic. It's 2026. Products gotten easier to build, but distribution has gotten a lot more harder. So with that said, Matthew, welcome to the podcast. And could you maybe take a quick moment to introduce yourself, especially about your background and your recent move from to US?
Okay, thank you, Guru. So Matthew Wyatt. I started in technology a long time ago. And when I say a long time ago, I started my first tech business when I was 22. And my wife also started the business with me. She was 21 at the time. So that's in 1999, if you'd like to do the math. So we have been in technology for a long, long time now. Started our first business and grew that reasonably successfully. And over time acquired other businesses, the complementary businesses and some other random businesses. At one stage, we had software development. We had a real estate company, and we also had a whole bunch of horses, race horses. So, and of course, a whole bunch of other things. So there was a pretty broad spectrum of organization. I took a year off to after we sold our businesses down, decided to have some time off, spent a year in Bali, and then lived in Indonesia, Bali. And then we came back. And for the last 10 years or so, I've been working with, for 15 years or so, I've been working as an advisor. I've had a few little startups here and there, startup, scale up, and then exit. And then the last couple of years, I've been running a marketing agency in between me starting technology businesses. So I'm a practitioner. I do technology. I love technology. That's my love. And then, of course, in between those little runs, I run an agency to help other businesses scale their sales and marketing in the B2B SaaS world. So about a year ago, about this time of the year, decided that we might, I've seen as I work from a laptop, I can be anywhere. So I have moved to the US. We moved from Australia, the sunny Gold Coast, and we now live in Princeton, New Jersey, which is close enough to New York without being in New York, and close enough to Philly without being in Philly. So it's a great position to be in, and we're really enjoying traveling around, seeing America. And we've got two young kids in high school, so their sports certainly drive us around the place as well. So there you go. That's my life in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I think our viewers might be able to feel the accent. I think, he's got now diluted, for the last maybe 6 to 8 months from the Australian accent to a US accent. So welcome again to the US, Matthew. Matthew,
thank you.
I want to start off with maybe if you set the stage. It's 2026. We are in, almost mid Feb, to almost late Feb. Looking back, things have changed very rapidly in the last maybe 2 to 3 years, especially the last 1 year or so. With PLG motions coming in, with AI now coming in, extremely strong growth teams have become, a lot more smaller. Earlier, you used to have, the sales and the marketing and the growth and the operations team itself would be half the company, sometimes even more. And the team sizes have been shrinking. Maybe could you set the stage a little bit of what's the change that you're observing, looking back, what's happening. And I think one of the pole points that you want to talk about is about the products becoming busier but easier to go build, but distribution becomes harder. So could you set the stage of what's happening before we look into what's going to come up in the very future?
Yeah, so lead sourcing and finding the people to talk to is becoming exponentially easier with the amount of data that's available. I still have a subscription to things like Zoom Info, which costs $25,000 a year. But I think that the time in which those sort of tools are going to be of high use is going to diminish over time, simply because the data is available and out there and almost free. $30 or $40 a month subscription with ChatGPT or Claude. And of course, with products like Clawbot, people are starting to create networks and teach the bot on how to actually go find that. I've helped some of my clients build secondary and tertiary networks and how to actually communicate with those people through using AI. So communicating with that is at scale. Publishing content is now at scale, and also product development is now at scale. I can go on there and I have, with my own spare time, built things using vibe coding, Base 44 and Lovable, these types of products. The thing is, though, at the end of the day, what happens is humans still need to communicate human to human. And how the market has changed over time is that the human used to be involved much, much earlier in the sale. So back in 1999 and through the 10, 12 years that I ran my first business, is that we would put an advert in the newspaper, dating myself at my very old age. People would phone us, also, once again, dating ourselves and how old we are. But what would happen is people would put an advert in the newspaper or a magazine and people would phone us. And the salesperson over time would then have a number of phone calls, number of conversations, number of demonstrations. They would provide documentation and credibility and trust and customers to talk to. And all of these things would happen. And then the person would be able to ask for the money. Today, Google have named it the messy middle. People become product or problem or company aware. Then they go Googling, they go looking around. And what happens is the people who are publishing, people who have built a personal brand, people who are out there talking about the issue and really describing the customer's issues, the ones getting attention. They're the funnels you fall into. And then you become part of their marketing machine. And so I was online on LinkedIn, and a person messaged me saying, do you want financial services? I won't go through the whole message, but basically saying, do you want financial services? And the next day sent me an email, sent me a message on LinkedIn saying, let me know if that is not of interest. Well, first of all, I don't know you, like you, or trust you. This is the first message you've sent me. I sort of do want financial services, but why would I want to go with him? So I went and Googled it and found a person who was publishing stuff, who was putting out content, who was putting out videos and articles. I went into their funnel, and as I was typing my email address into downloading their document, I thought, hang on, this person who sent a crappy message, which is probably automated, who they don't know me or like me or trust me, or they don't know anything about me, they sent this automated blast message out. What they're doing is they're actually creating me to be product and problem aware for other people. So he's doing the marketing for other people. And this is the big trap that businesses out there is, whilst these tools at mass communication are available, if you use them poorly, all you're doing is promoting the problem and the product and driving awareness into other people's funnels. And so Google, as I said, Google created the messy middle, not created, they talk about the messy middle. So marketing is now doing the building the trust, building the credibility, providing testimonials, doing demonstrations, telling the business's story all the way along. And then and only then does somebody make the heart-wrenching decision to pick up the phone and make a phone call. And that salesperson now has to be twice as good, 3 times as good as they ever have been, because they get one crack at having a really high-quality conversation and building rapport with that person, because the person already knows a lot about the business, knows a lot about their problem. That salesperson's got to be better than ever. So whilst teams, I haven't personally witnessed many teams shrinking, but what I've noticed is teams reallocating energy and people and time towards publishing content. So salespeople today should be publishing content. They should be using tools like what we sell. They should be looking at tools that are available online, taking their ideas and publishing, because the more people in an organization that's publishing and talking about the problem and providing a solution and communicating in a thought leadership type of way, they're the ones that are going to create greater market coverage, and they're the ones that are going to be found when somebody goes Googling for it or goes searching for it.
Matthew, you've talked about many things. Let me maybe drill down into a couple of them. You did mention that in the past, marketing was hard, generation was hard. It's gotten easier. Reaching out to people was hard. It has gotten now easier. You've also mentioned about communication to targeted audience has also become easier. You mentioned about some of the fallacies about the mass communication where they're not giving the context and they're generating leads for somebody else. But we'll come to that a little bit. You've also mentioned about publishing was hard, creating content was hard, and now that has gotten easier. Building products with vibe coding, and you mentioned about Base64 and Google AI Studios, and there's so many of them. It's gotten easier, and it was much harder then. So what is hard now? Why is it still hard, to actually, get sales? In fact, sales, if you notice, maybe, there's so many SaaS metrics, SaaS benchmarks that are now getting published, almost on a monthly, or weekly basis. The growth rates have started to decline. Acquisition revenue has started to fall massively, right? 40 is getting broken down. So what has gotten harder? If it was so many things have become easier, why is the sales not, or the revenue not, becoming easier to book?
Because it's easier for everybody, which means that this tsunami of communication coming at you on a daily basis is such that it's almost people become blind to that level of communication. You drive down any American highway, and you'll see 25 different ads for 25 different lawyers talking about 25 different versions of injury law. So now I don't know any of them. If there was one advert on the side of the road, maybe I'd remember that person. But now there's 25 of them every mile. And so same with if you shut your LinkedIn down, if you had the audacity to go away for a week holiday and don't look at your LinkedIn for a week, you'll have 1,000 messages. I've got 14,000 connections on LinkedIn, plus I'm publishing content almost every day. So therefore there's a lot, I get a reasonable amount of attention. I get hundreds of messages a week, and 99% of them are just, I've got the cheapest developers, I've got the best thing, I'm going to generate the most leads, all of this stuff. And it's all just noise, and so none of it gets through. So I don't really trust anybody, and I don't think and I don't think the market trusts anybody just on that cold DM. So what they do is they go looking, like what I said, they go looking for who actually is trustworthy. So who's publishing, who's published a book, who's communicating, who's putting out content that actually I can then communicate, I can consume on my phone, from my bed. Where people are living now in a world where they have a problem in their mind, they look for it, they see the issue on whatever platform they spend their time on, and that's who they actually start to trust if they see that over and over and over again. So the problem is that all of those tools have become really reasonably democratized. I used to pay copywriters, people who are incredibly skilled people at writing copy in my adverts, $1,000 a page for copy. $1,000 a page. I would pay these people thousands and thousands of dollars a month to produce high quality copy. Now, I can go and produce 1,000 pages for dollars using ChatGPT. It'll be pretty ordinary. It'll be a bit crap, to be honest. But the volume that's out there, and the problem is that a lot of technologists and a lot of people who aren't marketers, who don't understand psychology, who don't understand how people buy, they will go ahead and publish just an inordinate amount of garbage, put it onto LinkedIn, pull some image from the internet and say, I'm doing my job of publishing, I'm doing my job of communicating, but they're not. So really still, it's doing it well is still hard, but doing it is easy because it is free and at volume.
So I think maybe skimming down to what you're trying to say is it's getting easier for you to market yourself, your brand, reach out to various people, but to stand out, you might have to do some things differently. And we'll jump into that segment of what is that difference? How do you differentiate yourself from that noise? But we'll come back to that segment. Could you tell me a little more about, and you did mention at various places that AI is making it a lot more easier, but it's also generating a lot of crap. Pretty much if you look for, if you search for Google or on Google or Gemini, These days, you'll find a lot of content that's regurgitated hundreds and thousands of times by different people. Same content, but with slight changes, with slight pictorial changes, visual changes, words are slightly different, message is slightly different. But if you I think somebody was showing me about a tool that, hey, you can actually go and find out what's the root of all of these. If you can track the entomology of the content, you will be able to go find there is about 3 or 4 different sources, and from that it has germinated over the last maybe 3 to 4 months or so. Help us understand a little bit, and I'm sure our listeners would also want to know a little more about how do you differentiate now? What's the problem? You mentioned the volume is the problem. Generation of so much content, is creating so much noise that you're becoming immune to those signals. Even if somebody's telling you that, hey, you have a financial services, would you like it? And then goes away, you are now aware that you need financial services, but maybe not from that person. So what can he do or she do to be able to get your appropriate attention, make you aware of the problem, and being able to sell his services? Wouldn't that what we call as distribution? Take it away.
Yeah, so I've a couple of answers there, and you've asked a reasonably complex question, but try to give you some reasonably succinct answers. So first of all, what I talk to my clients about is I get them to think about the 4 key areas. And the 4 key areas, and I speak about this in meetings at least once a month with every single client. And I ask clients who are no longer working with me, who I've handed the tools over to, that they set into their calendar a 4 keys meeting. And those are marketing, 4 keys. So the 4 keys are your target market, not just your demographics, but your psychographics. And looking at your past couple of months worth of sales, past months worth of communications and conversations and leads, who have those people been? And have they been the right type of people? So first of all, target market, your psychographics, your demographics. So, we deal with X type of company selling this type of thing at this type of size. That's table stakes, that's basics. And then how do they buy? What are their values, their mission, vision? How do they think about that stuff? And so then as you continue to drill down into your target market, the more narrow you can get. And this is the thing that a lot of technology people get wrong, is because they build technology and they're probably pretty smart, they probably can fix most problems for most businesses. But nobody wants a generalist. If you think about doctors or any other real profession out there, the more narrow you are, so my wife, when we were in Canada a couple of years ago, slipped, broke her wrist. We went back to Australia. She had surgery. The surgeon that did her wrist, obviously shows up in a very nice Italian sports car, but he only does elbow down surgery. Only does elbow down surgery. So that level of specialization means that when we go to that guy, we know that the broken wrist, he's our man. But you don't go to a general practitioner who can do everything for that issue. So if you put that in terms of technology, the more narrow you are with your target market, the better off you will be. First of all. So the second part is your circle of influence. So your circle of influence is how many people know you, like you, trust you, who can speak about you, not just as a secondary, but also a tertiary engagement. Who can around a barbecue go, I hear your problem, have you spoken to Guru? I hear your problem, have you spoken to Matthew? So, or do you know what he does? So this is the thing that you need to think about, is what's your circle of influence? And this is why a few years ago, there was a huge push by celebrities to start alcohol brands, right? So these alcohol brands, these already existed. George Clooney didn't invent tequila, but he made $1 billion out of it because he slapped his name on it, drove a cool little motorbike around and said, now I'm a tequila expert. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. But really what he did is he was able to build his circle of influence and build the attention that he gets for that brand. The third part is your relationship. So in B2B world, you know your target market, you've built your circle of influence, so those people are now in your sphere of influence, they're now in your orbit. You need to build a relationship with them. So how are you building a relationship with them? What sort of content are you putting out there? What sort of value are you giving them? How can you deliver products for them, whether they be checklists, guides, audits, any of those types of things? How can you deliver products that add real value standalone and has that person trust you at a greater level? Because the speed in which you can grow your business is the speed in which you can grow trust and then transfer it. So I'm just going to say that again for the listeners. The speed in which you can grow your business is the speed in which you can build and transfer trust. And that is so important because, once again, that guy who was trying to sell me financial services, no trust. And I went and found somebody who over time, over a couple of weeks, built trust with, and then I engaged with that people, and I've got, talked about bringing money over from Australia, that type of thing. So the third part was relationship, and the fourth part is your offer. And the fourth part is your offer in the old way was free demo, which just gives the customer a job to do, and nobody wants another job. So free demos, I think, are possibly one of the worst things you can do these days, unless you've got significant amounts of trust and context there. Or it's a do or die affair. It's buy now or don't buy now. So what I do is I train most of my clients to do a step in the sales process in which they create the offer that gets them to do that, put a little bit of money in. So a lot of my clients are selling to large organizations. They're selling, $100,000 to $1 million solutions to these large organizations. And if a person's not willing to spend $5,000 as to understand the product's value, they're not going to spend $1,000 on the product. So what I would do is I now talk about monetizing the sales process. So every single month, I want all of the listeners to think about it is how are you working, how are you thinking and refining your target market? How are you thinking about your circle of influence and how you build that? How are you thinking about building your relationship with your customers and your prospects? And what sort of offer are you asking them to engage with? So if you can do those four things consistently, then you will build a business that continues to feed itself. So that's how I think about. So those four keys are really the areas in which you can really get and build trust with your customers and build a strong business.
So apologies, listeners. We took a small break, technical issue from Riverside, or tool that we are running with. We are back again now. So Matthew, we were talking about the four key elements, and
yes.
You did mention about a story about the surgeon that you went to, the very specific small segment that you go after, and the four key areas. Let me ask you, this is very novel now. This was the playbook, but for a very long time, most companies would go build generic platforms. They would go look at horizontal spaces, and then they will build singular apps on top of each of them. But over 3, 4, 5 years, their messaging, their everything becomes so very generic that they really would not stand out. And also they would become very expensive. So maybe circling back, what would you advise the startups, the grow ups, if you will, somewhere between maybe 2 to 10 million ARR companies? How should they think about this coming market? There's a tsunami of outbound that's still coming, and it will grow worse. There's a tsunami of content and publishing, probably bad content, that's going to come up for the next maybe 3, 4 years until we tap it down. What will change according to you, what will change for marketing? What will change for product? What will change for generic product, if you will? And then how do you differentiate? You did mention about a little bit of differentiation, but from a role standpoint, how should they change?
So there's a whole range of questions inside there, and I'll see if I can unpack those for you. So really what people should be thinking about from 2026 onwards is how they can continue to build and strengthen their personal brand and products. So products and businesses are emotionless entities. Businesses don't buy things, people buy things. And so people want to buy from people. This is why Mr. Beast now not only has a chocolate business, a YouTube business, a financial services business. So he's got all of these different businesses because he's got the attention. He's built that circle of influence around him, so he can continue to push those products out there. So really, it's about getting and gaining, holding that attention and providing value to those people. So really, every single salesperson and business owner in that $2 to $10 million range that you mentioned, the biggest hack that they could deploy right now is to double and triple down on their personal brand and their own story. Because the market doesn't really care about your business or your product, because good products are table stakes. Business names are forgettable, more forgettable than ever before, unless you've got $1 million or multi-millions of dollars to throw at a naming campaign and a logo campaign. But really, if you want to stand out in that $2 to $10 million range, it's about building personal brand and communicating one-to-one at scale. So that's really that's the only way that I see can do it. So first of all, you get their attention, because Gary Vaynerchuk from New York, from VaynerMedia, says that the number one asset that a business brand or personal, the personality is that personal brand thing. And what I've been saying to customers a long time is the only reason you don't have enough sales is not enough people know about you. Simple as that. So you need to be, and so that's the first thing. Second thing is we're certainly with social media, even though it's been around for many years now, it is still the best way to deliver content, valuable content to the market. Now, before we used to put adverts out, static adverts, just to put adverts out. Today, what we are recommending our clients do is they run free content, find the stuff that over indexes, and then turn that into an advert. So test the market, because I'm tired of guessing what the market's going to enjoy or look at. So we put out free content, we put out lots of stuff, and then when something actually grabs the market's attention, that's what we use to run adverts against. So it's we've got a free testing environment. Go on. Yep.
So if I can interrupt you there a little bit, could you unpack a little bit about, I think, this is a very interesting question. And by the way, we are live on LinkedIn and we just got, a couple of comments, from people who are listening there as well. The question that we are now seeing there is most founders in this particular range that we talk about, somewhere between 1 million to 10 million ARR, most founders are either product managers, they are engineers, they're not good marketers, they're not good salespeople. But your advice is that they should put their own brand first. They are very shy. Engineers are very shy. Product managers are very shy. So that's contrarian to what you're saying, that hey, let the founders change their natural being and become not so shy, become more extrovert, and put their own influence first rather than the company influence. Do you want to take maybe a quick moment to say, is that a change, and what would you recommend most founders do in this particular case?
Well, the problem with that is that the most technical people that I've dealt with, and I've dealt with some incredibly, like the smartest guys and girls in the room, and some of my clients have been those smartest people in the room, people who are best and most suited to sitting behind a keyboard. Now, I'm not saying those people need to change their personality. That doesn't make sense. But they need to find somebody who can represent the business. They need to find somebody who can communicate about the business. Now, if those people, if you can't afford it, you don't want it, that's okay. But you need to be able to find ways to communicate your value. And even if you're the nerdiest of nerds, the smartest of the smart, the most engineering engineer that ever engineered anything, those people still have lots to say because they're super smart. And so what they need to do is they need to find where's that, when you're digging for gold, you're looking for the vein of gold. And so the vein of gold that lives for those really smart people is usually in their answered questions, the lessons that they provide to the marketplace. So if these people just went through their outbox, their sent items, if they went through and they went and looked at the questions their internal team asked, because the internal team's going to ask some pretty hard questions, because often these really smart people, they bring younger developers, younger engineers to them, and they help them, they teach them stuff. If they go to the lessons they've taught, the sent items that they've got in there, and just look through there, the questions I've answered, there is a rich vein of valuable content you can share. And even if it's super nerdy, somebody will like it. And so there's that, or somebody in the business needs to represent the business and communicate that value. And the biggest challenge of businesses that I come across who have got to $2 million, they've sold to friends and family and referrals, and they've done just a really good job, and they've got a fantastic piece of software, and people, but they want to put their foot down. Maybe they've taken some investment, or maybe they just have an internal drive to grow a bigger business beyond a lifestyle business that they might have. There's time to grow it. And the challenge with that is they go, well, I need to get more referrals. Well, you can't just spend money and get more referrals. You can ask for more referrals. You might get some, but you can't, there's no lever, there's no tap to turn on to get more referrals. So what happens is they grew the business by being the best product people, but what got you here is not going to get you there. What got you to 2 million is not going to get to 10 or 20 or 50. Even if people start quoting, oh, well, what about the Atlassian guys? Or what about the Google guys? Well, the volume of PR, public relations, they go, oh, we don't do marketing, which is complete BS. They just do marketing a different way. They do marketing by doing an interview with somebody, by being on a podcast, by sitting on a board, by having somebody in their organization communicating that value at scale all the time. And so what I used to say in my business as it grew, I was lucky, maybe not lucky. I was burdened by not really knowing. The last time I wrote code was at school, so I am not anywhere near a coder. But in my meetings with my people today would call it a town hall, but in those days I just called it a company meeting. We didn't have cool names for stuff back in the early 2000s, and so we would say, "So, guys, ladies and gentlemen, just remember, we are a sales and marketing organization. We have software, and so many people think they're a software company, and sales and marketing is an annoying thing that we've got to spend the least amount of time and energy and effort on, and we'll sell because we've just got the greatest product ever." Well, I'm sorry, but if you build it, they will come only applies to ghost baseball players. The movie Field of Dreams. It doesn't apply to real world. So you need to be thinking about you might be able to build it. You still got to tell everybody about it and promote it and drive traffic to it and engage with your market.
That's wonderful advice. Get real, shed your introvert skin, get out there, and then figure out a way to market yourself.
Or just get somebody else to do it. Like, you don't need to. Sorry, mate. I don't need to talk over you. The lag. You don't need to do it, but you can still engage somebody in your organization to do it. That is, or you've just got to get over yourself, because if all you have is a hammer, the whole world might look like a nail. But if you if you can't communicate your value, nobody will know about you.
Yeah, you're so right, and I think it reminds me of a few examples. Google had Eric Schmidt book. It used to be Mark Zuckerberg in the beginning, but with so many PR stumbles, he had so many people that he had over a period of time, Sarah being one, and I think the list goes on and on. So you're so right about find the right people who can communicate that value, find the right people who can become that key magnet for the circle of influence.
Exactly.
That's
and one other thing there with Zuckerberg is that the clever thing there that he may or may not have understood overtly, but he understood maybe deep down, was supply and demand. And so what he did is he created higher levels of demand with lower levels of supply. And what did that mean? We're only going out to, first of all, to Harvard. And now we're only going out to Ivies. Now we're only going out to colleges. His first group of customers were only those people. And then as they graduated, well, now there was higher levels of there's more volume of people in that demand side than there was a supply. So you create the supply and demand tension, and you will be able to you'll drive more customers. It's much the same as the people who were at the Super Bowl recently, a couple of weeks ago, is that there's people out there saying, here's the view from my $3,400 seat. And they're 4 rows back. They needed a Sherpa. The temperature was much colder. It was way up in the stands. They were way back, $3,400 a ticket. The only reason they can do that is because supply and demand tension. If there was no demand, then they couldn't give away those crappy seats. So I think there's always supply and demand tension.
It also goes back to your 4 key elements, the target segment, keep it as narrow as possible. In the interest of time, I have about 2 or maybe 3 rapid fire questions.
Go for it.
Yeah, and I think you probably have been in that particular seat a little more than I've been asking people around. What would you say is a book or a podcast that you could recommend for someone who's not comfortable with what you just mentioned about? Put yourself out there, be a circle of influence, target the segment. What would you recommend on how they can shape their thinking?
So Velocity Selling is a book that I really enjoyed. And of course, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Those 2 books. Velocity Selling is from Bob Urachuk, a mentor of mine, great guy. I've got a lot of love for him. He's retired now. And of course, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Those 2 books are really influential on me. And of course, The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino.
Of course, how can we forget them? So we'll have those 3 in our show notes as well. Matthew, one more question. These are all the bright side of the things. I mean, you can learn from things, but what could you advise on the mistakes that most founders do that you've been seeing this, in advising almost about 30, 40, 50 or clients in the last year or two itself? How can they get rid of those mistakes? So maybe if you can point out 1 or 2 mistakes that they are making and advice on how they can get rid of it.
tactical overload. And what I mean by tactical overload is that there are so many. If you were to go to ChatGPT and say, how do I sell my thing? It'll give you 50 options. And so what you need to start with is who you are, who you sell to. Think about those 4 key areas that I talked about earlier. You talk about those 4 key areas, and then you go, I'm going to now get attention of these people. I'm now going to narrow down to these people. So the more narrow you get, the more you can charge, and the more of the right customers will come along. So there's 1,000 ways to communicate with the market. And also clients ask me all the time, oh, Matthew, what time should I be posting on LinkedIn? Or, how many words should my blog be? Or how many citations should I have? And that's all. So a lot of marketers like me will say, well, you've got to do it at these specific times, these specific ways. These are like 1% uplift things, right? But what we're missing is the 90% thing, which is just doing the blog, posting the content, making the effort to communicate your value. And it doesn't matter what time of day you do it is and what format you do it in. 90% of the effort, 90% of the value comes from just doing it, even if you do it badly. If you go to the gym and work out with crappy form and raise a sweat, at least you're in the gym. It's better than not going to the gym or thinking about it or that sort of stuff. So then once you've got that perfectly, once you've nailed the habit of posting, then we can talk about the citations and the timing and the word count and all this sort of stuff. Don't overthink it.
All those are paraphernalia. Yeah. So just do it, guys. Founders, just do it. I think that's the
Just
advice from Matthew.
Exactly.
Matthew, this is a wonderful podcast. Thank you so much for your time. And to all the listeners, we'll have in the show notes how you can reach Matthew. Matthew, one last comment from you. What would be the best ways for people to communicate with you? Where are you? What's your water holes? Where do you hang out? How can they reach you?
Well, if you're in Princeton, New Jersey, you can come and buy me a beer. So our office is at 300 Witherspoon Street. But to be serious, so those 4 keys I spoke about, we have a test on our website that you can go on and fill out that test, about 20 questions, and that'll give you an exact indication of where you are in each one of those 4 key areas, and then give you exact guidance on what to do next in each one of those 4 key areas and how to think about those. And that's a free test that we provide on our website so people can understand exactly where they are now and exactly what to do next. So you go to techtalk.co, so techtorque.co, and that will give you everything you need to know about taking the next step. And of course, find me on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is where I hang out. LinkedIn is where I publish a couple of times a day. We have podcast episodes. We give away. How I think about what I do is I give away all my IP and I charge for execution. So if you want to ask me a question, almost anything, I'll answer it. I have nothing to hide because I think IP these days is a diminishing value asset and execution is an increasing value asset. So that's how I'm hedging my business towards more that execution piece. So, and of course, if you're really early stage, I am a mentor at startups.com. So there's a community of about 6,000 startups in there asking lots of questions of incredible humans. I'm just one of the mentors. There's dozens of other people there that are specifically good for you. So that's how you can find me.
Thank you so much, Matthew. There you go, team. We have Matthew, founder of Tech Talk, and we will have his LinkedIn ID and his website in the show notes as well. Again, Matthew, appreciate your time.
Thanks very much. Bye for now.
Thank you.